Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross, so excited to get going here. I have coffee in my system, but regular coffee this time. No nitro cold brew. I decided to go back, to the normal, good old, reliable stuff. Hazelnut iced coffee with a little bit of cream, no sugar. That's how I roll. So I'm ready to go here. Zverev and Nadal in the Rome final. Nadal coming through with the title in that one, but it was not as straightforward as many people expected. Also, going back to the semifinal matchup between Nadal and Djokovic, Nadal made a key adjustment late in that first set, which especially in that tiebreak, which really helped him get through against Novak and winning that first set. And then also, I got some great comments on that video, and I'm going to do some comment response. Good, diverse, smart comments, and I'm really looking forward to that. And then after today's episode of Monday Match Analysis, I'm going to have a bonus video, so stay tuned for that as well. So let's start with Nadal and Zverev. In the first set, it looked like it might be straightforward, but things got complicated really quick. Nadal won that first set 6-1, but Zverev actually came back and won a 6-1 set of his own. So what happened there is the main question. Why was Zverev able to dominate Nadal Nadal taking a breadstick of his own, getting a taste of his own medicine on the red dirt? For the most part, it has more to do with Nadal than Zverev. Of course, it was a combination of both. But Nadal lost his range on the forehand. It's the first time I've seen it in this clay court season, but he lost that shot. It's one of the biggest weapons in men's tennis, obviously, but Nadal was missing a lot and decelerating on that shot, and that's when you know there's a big problem. When Rafa decelerates on the forehand, you know that he has kind of lost the confidence in that shot, and it's generally a big problem. But also, credit to Sascha Zverev, because the biggest shot, the best shot on the court, when Zverev was dominating Rafa in the second set and early in the third to an extent, the biggest shot on the court was Zverev's backhand. And this is a shot that we are going to be talking about very soon as one of the best weapons in men's tennis. It's probably already there, but that shot is tremendous, and I think that he attacks in similar ways that Novak Djokovic attacks, where it's not really that he's hitting that backhand 100 miles per hour, like some of the bigger forehands in the men's game, or like Thiem or Wawrinka can hit their backhands. It's really that he's able to step in, take time away, and hit really solid backhands on the rise with great location and obviously good depth and good pace. So that's how he's able to attack with that backhand. Very similar to the way that Djokovic is able to attack with that backhand. And when you have that good righty two-handed backhand, and a guy who can step in and take it on the rise, what you have is a player who's able to take advantage of Rafa Nadal's, I guess, one of his shortcomings, which is his tendency to leave his cross-court forehand short. And I've talked about before. I've talked about how Nadal has so many RPMs on the forehand, and he hits it with so much heaviness that a lot of the times he drops it short and it doesn't matter. But then there are those rare right-handed players who can step in and take a backhand on the rise, regardless of Nadal's RPM, regardless of his heaviness. They're able to take advantage when Nadal drops his cross-court forehand short. And I think that in large part, that's what we saw happening on the court when with Zverev. He was able to take advantage of and use his backhand to attack. He was able to take advantage of Rafa's short forehands, which were happening with increasing frequency in that second set and early in that third set. Rafa really just lost that forehand. It's something that we're starting to see more and more. I said after the Djokovic match, Rafa is looking more and more human. And what that means is there are just phases within matches where things are going in and out. where his return will go in or out and then back in again, or his serve will go out and back in again. And this is normal. And the reason he's a great champion is because he's able to figure things out. He's able to right his wrongs. He's able to adjust mid-match. He's able to correct his mistakes, and he's able to win the match. That's why he's a champion. But in the beginning of the clay court season, when Nadal's game was peaking, you saw, so many bagels, so many breadsticks. You saw no one able to bring him to a tie break. The best someone was able to do was maybe lose a set 6-4. That was the kind of dominance we were seeing from Rafa. The reason that dominance is not, has not lasted is because we are seeing human Rafa Nadal have points in his game where he kind of loses confidence in particular shots, particular aspects in his game for small portions in the match, or maybe even large portions in the match. The key for Nadal is he has such a great mentality, such a great fight, and enough other things in his game that he's able to rely on where it doesn't matter. In this match particularly, his backhand was fantastic against Zverev, and after the rain delay, where his forehand was, back to the weapon that it normally is, it was actually his backhand that was winning him a lot of points. So in the third set, Nadal goes down a break. It's 3-2, and the rain comes down. I tend to think that Nadal would have kind of fought back anyway even if the rain delay didn't come, but because he got that formal reset in the rain delay, which was about, if I'm not mistaken, like 45 minutes to an hour, and I might be wrong because I didn't actually sit through that rain delay. I came back to the match once it restarted, but because he had that formal reset, it did him wonders. There's no denying that. And for Zverev, I think that when he came back, he had some trouble with his forehand, which is the side that breaks down for Zverev. If you look at the break that Nadal got at 3-2, Zverev actually had a game point at 40-30. Nadal did a great job, played a great point to save that break point, but deuce, Zverev made a forehand error, a rather easy forehand error, and then also when trying to save the break point, Zverev had a tougher forehand. It was maybe considered a forced error, but another forehand error by Zverev. Once you give Nadal that break back, that momentum, that energy, you could really just see, Nadal playing his A-plus game, and Zverev will have no answer for Rafa's A-plus game on clay, which is what we saw in the first set, and that was all she wrote. So in terms of the rain delay, I tend to think that Nadal would have been able to fight this match out without it, but because he had it, they came back on the court and Zverev didn't win a single game. That's the third set, a 6-3 win for Nadal. Let's go to some footage to take a look at an adjustment he made against Djokovic. And it's interesting because Nadal or Djokovic and Zverev really try to do the same things against Nadal. So when Nadal plays Djokovic, they tend to play strength to strength because they both want the same thing. Nadal wants forehands, Djokovic wants backhands, which means they're going to play that cross-court pattern. Nadal's forehand to Djokovic's backhand. They're going to play that all the time. And Nadal, you can see, makes a concerted effort to try to get himself as many forehands as he can. So check this out. Nadal has a backhand here, and as a lefty, Nadal understands that his best chance at getting a forehand in his next shot is going to be taking this ball to Djokovic's backhand. So it's kind of a pattern changer. It's a little bit more natural to hit this backhand, to pull this backhand to Djokovic's forehand, but Nadal's going to resist that urge and hit it to Djokovic's backhand. That gives him the best chance to get a forehand on his next shot. I've played lefties with really good forehands and weak backhands. I played a lefty who loved to go down the line with his forehand. And it didn't make any sense because when he went down the line with his forehand in a in a casual kind of rally ball situation, it made it so easy for me to hit my forehand cross court and get it back to his backhand. So if you are a lefty who wants to protect your backhand, you need to do the best you can to make a righty hit a backhand down the line. That's such a tough shot. And in this instance, Djokovic isn't going to hit it. Djokovic is going to hit his forehand cross court. And this is a casual average rally ball. But the adjustment Nadal made here is Nadal realized that his best chance against Djokovic was to be first, to open up the point, was to go down the line with his forehand before Djokovic would have a chance to go down the line with his backhand, to play aggressive tennis to the point where he was leading, where he was changing direction. More on this a little bit later, but a strong forehand down the line by Nadal opens up the rally. Djokovic changes to continental grip and tries to defend cross court. Nadal, you see with that strong cross step to his right, he's going to work around his backhand and hit a runaround forehand and hit a winner to end the point. So what you saw there was Rafa making sure that he led first with his down the line forehand. It reminded me of a fight because late in that first set, Djokovic was getting the better of the play. He was timing the ball so well. His ground strokes were so good. He was able to change direction so well and put Nadal on the defensive on most neutral baseline rallies. And that's where Djokovic was finding his success in this match. He was finding this success in changing direction often, going down the line often, and making and dictating rallies. He was the aggressor in this match. How can Nadal change that? Nadal changed that by making a concerted effort to go down the line with his forehand very early in rallies. Don't wait to hit that shot. Hit it as soon as possible. In a fight, you have two guys with your hands up. This is how I kind of think about it. You have two guys with their hands up in a fight, right? And one guy is going to lead. One guy is going to throw the first strike. The other is going to counter. Tennis is the same thing. In a neutral cross-court rally, someone's going to lead and someone's going to counter. So for Djokovic, when he was down 5-2 in that first set, he came storming back because his ground strokes were impeccable and he was leading. He was always leading and Nadal was countering. Nadal was trying to use his legs and defend and try to get back in points where he was on the back foot, and Nadal does a great job at that. But with Djokovic playing his best game off the ground, it was not a winning formula. Nadal made sure in that tiebreak to lead. Instead of countering, let me be the first player to change direction. Let me take my forehand down the line early in rallies the first time I get a chance to do it. That's what he did in that rally. That's what he did in that tiebreak. And then, he was able to win that first set off of Djokovic, and then really outfight and outwork Djokovic in that second set, as I said after the match. And obviously Djokovic has no chance. But it was that adjustment where I felt like Nadal was hanging back, waiting for Djokovic to make the first move, waiting for Djokovic to throw that first strike, so to speak. That was the problem for Nadal when Djokovic took control of that match. And Nadal did a good job of recognizing, I need to change something here, and using his down-the-line forehand with so much regularity in that tiebreak. So that's what kind of turned the match there. With Zverev, though, you see the same thing. You see the same pattern. Zverev is able to step in and punish Nadal for short forehands, just like Djokovic is able to do that, and change direction, go down the line. Even though Zverev, in the past, I've yelled at him for not going down the line enough, he did do it in this match. Zverev, 14 matches in 19 days. Very, very impressive run by him, especially from a physical perspective, which is a part of his game which has been, brought into question because he's had trouble in the majors. But I think Zverev is finally ready to physically deal with that 2-week best-of-5 set format. I think he's shown it here. And then, of course, the scheduling was pretty tough because he had that late match against Cilic and then had the early match against Nadal in the final. But I thought he did a pretty good job here fighting through that physically. And we'll get more to that later. That's actually a good segue into the comments because I know some people were asking me about that. So let's take a look at some of the comments that we saw in this Djokovic-Nadal match. I think I'll go to about the 25-minute mark here. Okay, David Quant says, one of the biggest issues I have noticed in the match against Nadal is that Novak's return isn't as consistent as when he was peaking. When his return is fully back, he gains confidence in his whole game. Honestly, I don't see the physical issues as much as you do, Gill. He played a very grueling 2 hours and 20-minute match and only had 17 hours between matches. You're right, he isn't 100% back physically, but he isn't as bad as some people seem to think. When you lose a tiebreak set like that, it can be tough to take. Of course, the guy that wins it is going to come out feeling loose and able to go for it even more. Had Novak won the first set and Rafa hadn't hit those 3 lines in a row, the whole match changes. That's how close tennis can be at times. Also, Nadal's cross-court backhand was never as good as it is now. That is something that Novak didn't have to deal with when he went on that 7-match winning streak against Nadal. It's such an improved shot and showed at times in this match. All right, so a couple points here. Novak's return. I liken Novak's return sort of to his movement right now, where it's definitely not at that peak level, but it's probably not the thing holding him back to a certain extent. So I agree that it's not where it was. Just like his court coverage, that Gumby-like movement. Novak used to make you win a point 5 times before you could actually win the point with his legs. And right now, his movement isn't quite at that level. Same thing with his return. His return is not quite at that level. But when he gets upset by guys who he should beat, when he's not competing against guys who he should be competing against, is it his return that's really the issue? Probably not. So I think it's a valid point, but sort of like what you're telling me with his movement, I think that it's not one of the biggest concerns right now. So he says, honestly, I don't see the physical issues as much. And then he points to that scheduling. A lot of people were talking about the scheduling. A lot of people were saying, I wasn't fair to Novak because he didn't have enough time to rest between the matches. So if he played 2 really tough sets against Nadal, and I think that mentally he was competing as hard as he could, and then in the 3rd set, his body kind of gave out on him, I think that then I would say, yeah, the scheduling definitely played a part here. The scheduling might have lost him this match. Unfortunately, he played 1 long, tough set against Nishikori. That 3rd set was really tough, really physical. The first 2 sets weren't. But then against Nadal, he never got to the point where his body gave out on him. To me, I think that the reason I pointed to Djokovic getting tired physically is because early in that 2nd set, he attempted a lot of drop shots and he kept going to the net and he kept trying to end points short. The other thing was Djokovic wasn't winning any points where he had to defend. Whenever Nadal was dictating, Nadal won each point. Where obviously the other way around, there are a lot of points where Djokovic dictates and Nadal is able to use his legs, get back in the point, and win the point. So those 2 things, Djokovic's inability, or those 3 things, Djokovic's inability to come back in a rally, Djokovic's kind of attempt to end points quickly with drop shots and coming to the net. I'm kind of looking at that and I'm like, oh, okay, is he tired? What's going on here? So I think that a lot of it probably is kind of his mind getting in the way of his body. Because a guy getting tired, we know what that looks like. Whether that be someone cramping, whether that be someone, getting into 30-shot rallies over and over again. And then we've seen this out of the Big Four where, you have your hands on your knees in between rallies and you can't seem to get your breath back. Your lungs feel like chalk and your legs feel like 2 bricks and they're heavy. Did that happen? No. So when I'm talking about him getting tired, I think that it's very much as much mental. So here you say that you don't see the physical issues as much as I do. That's fair. But also he admits, David admits that he isn't 100% back physically. But he isn't as bad as people seem to think. So we're going to see some disagreements because David here says, I don't think the physical issues are as bad, but we're going to see other comments where people are like, I don't know, those physical issues, man, those are pretty bad. And then let's see. Then he says that if Rafa hadn't hit those 3 lines in a row, things could have changed. That's definitely true. Novak probably would have felt like he could. I don't think that Novak really believed in that second set. Just by the way by the way, I guess, his lack of fight led me to believe that he resigned to losing the match. That's just what it tells me. Against Nishikori in that third set, clearly, the fire, Novak thought he should win. Novak thought he would win, and that's how he was playing. Okay. And then he mentions the cross-court backhand by Nadal and how much improved that shot is. That shot's tremendous right now. It's a really important shot because if Novak misses his spot on his backhand down the line, Rafa 10 out of 10 times is going to hit to the open court with his cross-court backhand, which is something that we're obviously going to see frequently. So if that shot's really firing, Nadal's able to counterpunch with that shot. He's able to flip a rally where Novak thinks that he's on top of a point going down the line with his backhand. Rafa is able to counterattack with his cross-court backhand. We did see that a lot in this match. Okay, let's go to the next one. Gail McLean, hey, it's your show. You don't have to ask permission to be critical. You're critiquing the match. I think everyone, or most people, would think that it's a bit disingenuous if you praised all the players all of the time. No matter whose fan club your subscribers support, they've got to be prepared to listen to criticism of them when it's warranted in your opinion. That's why we watch, isn't it? Just saying. Well, I appreciate that, and I do want to kind of talk about that. A couple points in this comment I want to talk about. So one, you don't have to ask permission to be critical. So in that reaction, in that Rafa Novak reaction, first of all, the first thing is I wanted to do this. I wanted to do this comment response. So I'm going to say, what do you guys think? Am I being unfair? So that's the first thing. However, you're right. Gail here is correct that I'm a little bit nervous when I say a player is lacking fight. A player is lacking fire. Because to me, that is the number one greatest insult I can ever deliver to a player on tour. It's the number one thing that I can say that as a player, I would be most insulted by. It is the number one attack on a player, is saying that I felt like you could have fought harder. So whenever I'm like, I think Novak could have fought harder, I'm a little bit nervous when I say that, because that is the only way that I can. I would rather someone tell me that my backhand is like a 4-year-old beginner backhand. I would rather someone tell me that than someone tell me that I could have fought harder. So that's when I want to make sure. That's when I do get nervous saying that, because I want to be fair, and I don't ever want to say that when it's not true. So that's where you're kind of right, where I might have been a little bit nervous, and you're saying just say it. I don't care, just say it. So that's true. We would think it's a bit disingenuous if you praised players all the time. Yeah, I try not to do that for sure. I try to also give opinions. Whatever I see, just say it. And I think that there are probably people who have opinions, but they don't say them because they know that either they're going to upset people or people are going to disagree. And I try to, even if I know people are going to disagree or people are going to get upset, I definitely try to just say it. And I do think that I'm not going to name any names, but I do think that there are channels out there, a couple of tennis talk channels like this one out there, where they don't really say much. Like there's almost, they don't give you anything to discuss or disagree with. There's no boldness. It's kind of just very, I guess, safe. So I do try not to do that. So I appreciate this comment. Let's go to the next one. What are your thoughts? I'm going to pick up the pace here. What are your thoughts on Del Potro's retirement against Gaffan? Del Potro's retirement again, and Gaffan looking forward to Roland Garros. Del Po seemed to have lost all the momentum that he had gained going in the hard court swing. There doesn't seem to be much momentum anymore. That was sort of the concern. That's always the concern when he takes the layoff, although I think that he needed the layoff. I don't feel like he is headed into the French Open with a ton of good feelings, a ton of confidence. So I came into the clay court season kind of thinking that he was the number one threat to Nadal. I don't think that anymore. And you'll see, I'm going to do a power rankings of Nadal's threats in that bonus video I teased in the beginning of this edition of Monday Match Analysis. So you'll see where I have him ranked. It's certainly not number one. I used to have him as the number one threat to Nadal, even on clay, just based on what I saw in the hard court season. One more quick point on Del Po. His forehand's very flat, and that's not great for the clay. So I do think that if you compare, let's say, Nadal's forehand to Del Potro's forehand, on a hard court, I like Del Potro's forehand. On a clay court, I like Nadal's forehand. So Del Potro's best weapon is not accentuated by the clay. Nadal's best weapon is accentuated by the clay. So that's where you see surfaces come into play. I don't expect too much out of Del Po for the French Open. I wouldn't expect him to contend for that title. Gaffan looking forward to Roland Garros. Gaffan, great clay court player, does a lot of the things, his all-around game, his all-around baseline game, his ability to take time away, his ability to change direction, his point construction is excellent. These things, they all help him on the clay. I think he had a decent clay court season, but let's take a look at his draw. If he has a good draw, he can make a deep run, but I don't see him as a contender for the title. Mr. Shake, a few more here. Two more, actually. I wouldn't call this baby steps because I was saying that these are good baby steps for Novak. Mr. Shake doesn't agree. He had a favorable draw until he faced Nadal. Nole always is extra motivated when playing Nadal. If he was playing anyone else, you would see he wouldn't be able to feed on the pace Nadal, a lefty, gives him. He beat an inconsistent Nishikori who lacked confidence. I think Djokovic is going out early in the French unless he gets a favorable draw, which you said he got in Rome. Nadal is always nervous when playing Nole, and he showed it when he got broke in the first set. You are not wishy-washy. You are right that Novak didn't show his number one level. Good analysis as always, thank you. And yeah, he kind of quit in the second set. So you can kind of tell this is one where he's watching the video and commenting as he goes. Those are always fun. Okay, so he had a favorable draw until he faced Nadal. So I think that this comment doesn't give enough respect to Nishikori. Nishikori had beat Dimitrov, and he also had a really nice run in Monte Carlo. So Nishikori, I don't think he really lacked confidence. I think that Nishikori's game is on the way back, and I think he played pretty well against Djokovic as well. So I think that the one thing that this comment is kind of missing is the respect for Nishikori. So Nole had a very favorable draw, that is true, in the first round, in the second round, but then he had a win that impressed me against Nishikori. So we've seen Nadal get upset by guys he should beat, and we've seen Nadal lose to players of Nishikori's caliber. The one thing is Nadal, or Djokovic rather, did beat Nishikori already, I think, in Madrid. So while Nishikori, while Nishikori is a player who I think is playing top 25 tennis right now, Djokovic does have that edge where he knows he can beat him. So I think that's true. But I would say, I would still disagree beating Nishikori, playing well against Nadal, not getting upset in the early rounds. I think that those are the baby steps. So let's see. I think Djokovic is going out early in the French unless he gets a favorable draw. Maybe. I don't think you can feel comfortable with Djokovic yet, but at the same time, I think that he showed he showed his peak game here in Rome. I think he played top 10 level tennis. At the same time, he's been so inconsistent, especially mentally, that he's certainly a candidate to be upset. Nadal is always nervous when playing Nole, and he showed it when he got broke in the first set. I would say that Novak played exceptional tennis, though. Nadal, he was up 5-2. He blew the lead. I think that Djokovic had a large hand in that, though. And then he also agrees that Djokovic kind of quit in the second set. Kind of quit? Sure. But that kind of is important because quit's a strong word. He quit against Thiem in last year's French Open, for sure. He did quit a few times last season, and I don't think that this was a full-out quit job, but certainly could have fought harder, in my opinion. And then last comment here, Aaron Smith, loyal commenter. Per your comment on conditioning, as someone who hadn't watched Novak play in almost a year, I was struck by how thin he looks. Not unhealthy thin, but his looks remind me of when I first started watching him in the 2000s when his conditioning was a known issue. I guess because of all the stuff on and off the court he's been going through in these last few years, he had to completely reset and start from square one. I mean that in a good way. He's definitely making progress, slow though it may be. There were stretches in his game where I glimpsed the Novak machine we're used to, that he never misses a makeable shot. Good points in this comment. So the one thing that I've always objected to in Novak's comeback is people saying he's not hitting the ball hard enough because he's too skinny. And that comment doesn't say that, but it does it does talk about that he looks skinnier. I think he looks a tad skinnier, for sure. I'm gonna take a look at a picture. I want to do some real scientific comparison and take a look at that. His skinniness, it's not striking to me. He's always been skinny. The one thing I will say is he is hitting a heavy enough ball. I don't think that that's an issue right now. He's never hit the heaviest ball, but I do think he's hitting a heavy enough ball where I don't think that that's holding him back. Some people are saying that he's too skinny and he's not hitting it hard enough, and I don't agree with that. And then, I guess he had to completely reset from square one. Sure. That's a good thing. Yup. The Novak machine that he never misses a makeable shot. We did certainly see glimpses of that, and that's a very good point. And that's where I think that this was top 10 Novak Djokovic. To get back to, to get to top 3 Novak Djokovic, we got to see that impeccable return. We might need to see that movement, maybe not get back to where it was because he's getting old, but we need to see him able to win points with his defense. We haven't seen that yet. But in terms of his ability to dictate with his forehand and his backhand, taking time away, changing direction, not making errors, that's what we saw. That's that top 10 level Novak Djokovic. And that's all we got. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.